The Valley of the Kings. The tomb KV39, possibly Amenhotep I. The tomb of Thutmose I and Hatshepsut KV20. KV38, the second tomb of Thutmose I. The as yet unidentified tomb of Thutmose II and the tomb of Thutmose III KV34. The tomb KV39, possibly Amenhotep I. The mummy of Amenhotep I was found in Kashet DB 320. Therefore it is likely that he too was buried in the Valley of the Kings. For a long time, grave MB was considered a possible royal grave. The tomb was subsequently equipped with a well shaft and fragments of stone vessels with the names of Amenhotep I, Amenhotep III, Thutmose and a Princess Hrate were found. Howard Carter thought it was the double tomb of Amenhotep and her son Amenhotep I. These two were later deified as patron gods of the Theban necropolis. They are also depicted in other graves. For example, in grave TT 359 from Inherkau. When assigning grave NB, there are problems with the Abbott Papyrus, a control report from the time of Ramesses X, because it is difficult to apply to this grave. Grave KV39 was only uncovered by John Rose in 1989. Its eccentric floor plan is very eye-catching. The tomb, it appears, was started as a corridor tomb. Then it received a long corridor to the south that leads into a chamber. The chamber has a pit in the floor to accommodate a sarcophagus. The grave also has an eastern corridor which also leads to a chamber. However, a well shaft is missing. Numerous fragments of coffins, textiles, jars and skeletal remains of 9 or more people were found. Sandstone labels bear the names of Thutmose I, Thutmose II and Amenhotep II. The inspectors of Ramses X could have described the grave as intact because it is accessible without a well shaft. However, the text is confusing and some terms cannot be identified. Arthur Weigel considered KV39 to be the grave of Amenhotep I. Both graves have features that would allow them to be identified as a royal grave. More recent excavations rule out KV39 as the grave of Amenhotep I. The tomb of Thutmose I and Hatshepsut KV20. The tomb lies in the direct extension of the axis of Hatshepsut's temple. The tomb was originally built for Thutmose I. Hatshepsut first had the Wadi rock tomb built for herself. She later had grave KV20 expanded into a double grave with her father. The grave winds down 213 meters. The slate walls of the burial chamber are unsuitable for wall decoration. Therefore, the Amenhotep was made in the form of inscribed limestone slabs. These probably lined the room. In terms of style, they are similar to the stick figures from the tomb of Thutmose III, very similar. John Romar also noted that the system of measurement used in the burial chamber corresponded to the system of Hatshepsut's temple. The mummy of Thutmose I was later moved to tomb KV38, leaving Hatshepsut alone. Her mummy is missing today. KV38, the second tomb of Thutmose I. This tomb appears to have been built later than KV20, as it is already much more canonical. It was probably under Thutmose III built. It is very similar to the grave KV34, but is a little simpler. A corridor leads to an undecorated antechamber. Through a short staircase and a corridor, the visitor enters a cartouche-shaped coffin chamber with a pillar and a single storage room. Fragmentary texts from the Amenhotep and Checha friezes are displayed in the coffin chamber. The as yet unidentified tomb of Thutmose II. In the case of Thutmose II, researchers are not sure whether we already know the tomb. KV42, DB 358 and WN are considered candidates. KV42 seems to be more of a grave for Hatshepsut Merita, a wife of Thutmose III. 2b. Although it has the cartouche-shaped coffin chamber, a well shaft is missing. The foundation stone deposit refers to the queen, but she was probably never buried there. Sedge seems to have been buried in KV35. Although DB 358 has the well shaft, the grave is already outside the Valley of the Kings. And the remains found can be attributed to Queen Amenhotep I, the wife of Amenhotep II. The grave WN remains unexplored to this day. However, Thutmose II appears to have been buried in the valley or nearby, as his mummy was found in Kashet DB 320. The tomb of Thutmose III KV 34. The grave was discovered on February 12, 1898 and excavated by Victor Lawet. The excavation was carried out very carefully. Each property was entered into a site plan. The floor grid that was created for this purpose can still be seen in the burial chamber today. Several foundation stone deposits, some wooden statuettes and fragments of model ships were found. The grave had already been extremely brutally plundered in ancient times. Gold-plated objects must have been thrown violently against the walls, because traces of gold can still be seen in the walls today. The mummy of Thutmose III was in Kashet DB 320, found in one of his original saws. But the gold had been torn away. Little jewelry was found on the mummy itself. The tomb of Thutmose III is a very typical representative of the royal tomb type of the earlier 18th dynasty. It is located far back at the end of the valley and has a camouflaged entrance. In architecture, the features that were already introduced by Thutmose I in KV 38 are continued and brought into a developed form. The grave floor plan has a curved shape. Stairs and corridors led to a well shaft. You then enter a decorated antechamber, and a staircase into the rounded, cartouche-shaped coffin chamber with two supporting pillars. The coffin chamber has 4 storage rooms. The grave already has quite extensive decorations. The well shaft was painted with Cheshire friezes on the walls and the ceiling with stars. The antechamber has a decoration that is unique in the valley. There is a long list of 741 deities of Amenhotep. The coffin chamber itself was painted with the Amenhotep. The Amenhotep is depicted in its entirety for the first time in a royal tomb. The pillars contain the litany of Re on 7 surfaces. On the 8th surface is Thutmose III depicted being breastfed by a tree goddess called Isis. Possibly Thutmose I's mother was called Isis. The style of the tomb is striking. The decoration is carried out in a light, fleeting drawing style. The figures are reminiscent of stick figures. The Amenhotep in the coffin chamber is designed like a papyrus that was rolled onto the wall. The walls are whitewashed. The figures and paths of Amenhotep are painted in black and brown red. The grave appears very bright and light. The cartouche-shaped coffin chamber also supports the style of the scroll architecturally.